Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. Finger guns. Pew, pew. What up? How's things? How are we all doing? We have a puppy. You want to just see the puppy right off the bat? Let's get the puppy up here. Come here. Hey, come see me. Come here. Come here. Come on. Come on. Oh, there's the puppy. It's a little puppy head. Hello, little puppy head. What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh my goodness, just wanted to give me sugars. Hello. Goodness gracious. A little bit of puppy love right off the bat, huh? Things are good. This is good. I'm glad that things are good in your world. I have been doing okay, I think. The biggest problem is I don't know. I've been waking up really early. Part of this, I think, is I've had some sinusy stuff going on, and I'm pretty sure at one point it turned into a sinus infection, and it's this weather stuff that's doing that whole 80 degrees one day and 30 degrees the next day, and it's crazy times in the South. Yeah, we'll have all four seasons in a week, sometimes in 3 days. So nasal stuff, just broadly nasal stuff. But of course, it is what it is. I'm okay. I can't complain too terribly much. There are other things going on. But anyway. Hey, gotta stop licking your leg. Gotta stop doing that. Yeah, so welcome in. This is Adventures in History. We get 4 seasons in a day. Well, there we go. So you win. But you all actually have seasons, also in the seasonal spread of things. We really only have hot and not quite as hot. And then we'll have winter in 16-hour stretches where it'll be really hot, and then it'll freeze for a day, and then it'll go back to really hot, and it's crazy. Yeah, and it's all humid. Everything is humid, but Ireland has quite a bit of humidity as well. There's quite a bit of moisture in the atmosphere up that way. We could always gripe about the weather, right? So I recognized this today, earlier in the day, when I was sort of wrapping my head around, streaming tonight, that this was not necessarily a thing, but it's kind of a thing. So this is Adventures in History, episode 130. And when you compare this with viewer request streams, which I've done 70, that means that this is the kind of 200th history episode that I've done, which is kind of cool. We're coming up on 3 years of me streaming, so that's also kind of cool, I think. We didn't really do anything at the 1 year mark or at the 2 year mark, so I don't think we're going to do anything sort of special or specific at the 3 year mark, but as always, I appreciate you all. It does make my day better when I get to come on and hang out with people that are involved and ask good questions and genuinely want to learn. That's good stuff, and I appreciate it. I'm glad that you all deign it possible to spend time with me. So that's my thanks. But some cool stuff tonight. And I was talking about this a little bit earlier in the mod chat, that I was a little bit anxious about Southeast Asia and India. I've noticed just by looking at numbers from past streams that there's not necessarily a whole lot of love for Southeast Asia or India. And the groups, just by number of people that are around, is usually somewhere between 20 and 25% lower than if pretty much any other stream if we talk about Southeast Asia or India. And I know that some of that is because it does seem very, very new and very foreign, because in many situations, especially if we've been to, Western schooling, you don't hear about this area at all. And the first time that you maybe hear about this is the Vietnam War, right? Which is in the 1960s. So what happened in this region before, right? Occasionally during your streams, a cog turning in my brain, and I realize, oh, that's why things. Yeah. See, that's the great part about it. Like we're explaining why things are the way that they are, and I really like those moments where you get to step to the side and you see that the whole thing was just a kind of an opaque, or the illusion of opacity. In reality, you can see it. It reminds me, I use this a lot, like in the movie Inception, when they're making stuff in the dreamscape, and you just build it in a certain way that when you look at it, it just sort of becomes the other thing, right? You do your little stairwell where you're always constantly walking up or down the stairwell, because it all does connect to each other. That's the why thing, the reason things are the way that they are, right? And that's good. I like hearing that. It makes me very happy to know that we are causing the cogs to turn. I call them light bulb moments, where you just have a light bulb that just goes bing, and you're like, oh, I get it. And those are the good things. But we're going to talk about Southeast Asia tonight, and regardless of how big the crowd is, whatever, I'm actually really excited about it because I love this kind of stuff. But you all understand that I'm super biased and I love all of history. I've never met a period in history that I don't want to talk about. So I do like this one particularly because it's really fascinating. They have a lot of really cool culture, and you don't get a lot of this stuff on what I call the bus tour, right? And it's always fun to explain why things are, right, and how they got there. So we're going to be talking about 3 different empires in Southeast Asia, and we're going to start with the one most northerly, and then we'll work our way sort of south and east in Southeast Asia. History equals documentation of how we do the same crap over and over again in slightly different ways. Yeah, mostly murder. Well, I mean, there's going to be some assassination tonight, but there's also going to be really cool stuff, like the world's biggest Buddhist temple. That's literally shaped like a mandala that you can see, from space, and we'll kind of look at it. You can't see it from space, but it's ridiculously big. It's not even ridiculously big. That's the wrong word. It is remarkably large. What's up, KP? Good to see you, my friend. We'll talk about an empire who exists for about this little 100-year block in the 900s. The 800s. And they show up and they do a lot of cool stuff and they have a lot of cool culture, and then they immediately fall back apart and get swallowed up by other cultures. But that's the cool stuff about history, right? You have these great little periods of time, like Nanjiao. They're not around for very long, but it's pretty cool that they are, right? Murder. What's up, Shmonite? How's it going? So let's start with Nanjiao. First off, what the devil are we talking about? Well, down here, in this southeasterly region, there is going to be a country that is called Nanjiao. And I realized at this point that I can show you this map, but if you don't know what it looks like on the big part, you might not necessarily know where I'm pointing at. This is the Kingdom of Nanjiao at its largest extent. But let me go back out here and we'll sort of point to exactly where we're talking about. So if we go back to the old mapper here, what we're looking at is this region right around here. So this is the southeastern corner of the Tibetan Plateau. We get what is modern-day Myanmar, especially these big river valleys here. that lead down to the Indian Ocean, and we get this southwestern portion of China. So this sort of region right around in here. This is where Nanzhao is going to be. It was downwind of the PU city-states. They actually conquer. Well, it's...
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! Metran, thank you so much for that subscription. Welcome in, my friend. I hope that your studies are treating you well. I know that you have to stay up very, very early in the morning to catch a stream. But it's good to see you, and thank you so much for that subscription and for your 15 months of support. That is amazing. Hope you're doing well. Seems like a good location. All the gambling to the northwest and all the sugary orange drink to the south. Yeah, exactly. The Tong is up there, right? It's not Tang, it's Tong. But anyway, there's a really cool group of people that live in this region. Now, interestingly, they're not all one big unified ethnic group. This is actually kind of an interesting origin story, and this is where we actually get our title for tonight, which is, of course, Bai Bai Bai. It's pronounced Bai. And what's up, Raveland? Good to see you. They are one of the main ethnic groups in this region. There's also the Yi, which is just spelled Y-I, who are in this area. But they start with the same period of time that we've been talking about in China. Yes, I was singing in sync. There was a period of time where that was the stuff. And, of course, that's the pun title tonight. Yi. I think he spells that Y-E-E or Y-E. But I appreciate that. Y-E-E, yeah. Yi. What's up, Cave? Good to see you, my friend. Hope you're having a good one. So there are several small political units that are down in this corner right here. And at certain times, they are directly in control of China. China's directly in control of them. At other times, they're more sort of semi-autonomous and they're vassals of the larger Chinese empire. But they're definitely going to be part of this larger movement in the 700s and into the 800s of the use of Jadushi. And we've talked about this several times in relationship to the Tang dynasty, but the word here is Jadushi. And these were generals in the Chinese army that were not ethnic Han Chinese, but they had been given power in regions or provinces where Han Chinese was not necessarily the dominant ethnic group. And they did this in the Tang Dynasty. We've talked about this before in stream, so I don't necessarily have to go back all the way over it. But they did this as a way to try to pacify some of these border zones, right? That didn't really like issuing or being issued orders from some people in the Chinese capital a long way away. This gave them a little bit more sort of local flavor of leadership, you know. So this Jadushi are going to be in control of this region, and their leaders are not necessarily going to be the most dependent of Chinese vassals. We'll just say it that way, right? The Knights who say Yi is the Francophone version. Wir the Knights who say Yi. Anyway, the guy that's going to be instrumental here in establishing our kingdom of Nanzhao is a god named Piluogi. Now, what's interesting here, in Nanzhao you write his name together, but not pierogi, no. His family name is Pi, and then his personal name is Luogi, and you just kind of mush it together in their world. But he looks like this. This is a artistic rendition of him that is copied off of some texts from this time period, We do have a lot of documentation about this area. It's not Cthulhu. He's just got a big hat, right? A big hat with some feathers on it and some styled haircuts. But anyway, we do have quite a bit of documentation about this period, but specifically, it's all going to be early on from the Chinese perspective. So especially this guy who's taking over actually in the early 730s. Now I know this is backing up a little bit from our kind of 9th century timeline, but this works better when sort of seen as a clump here. So we are going to back up a little bit to Pi Luoge. But he is one of the regional Jiaos. So that's kind of like his title. He's the leader of one of these little regions. And there had been already some division between the people of this area. They'd kind of separated themselves east and west. And there were like the group that was associated with the white and the group that was associated with the black. Anyway, there's this whole political situation that gets fairly involved, and we could talk about it if you're super fascinated, but generally speaking, we should know that there are different groups of people, and there are about 5 or 6 different regional elements, and Piluogi is going to be in charge of one of them, but he decides we should put all of our eggs in one basket and make ourselves a king. So how do we do that? Well, he's going to start unifying them, and he does some of this in a kind of a brutal way. He decides to invite all of the other leaders of these regional polities over for dinner. And when they show up for dinner, he burns down the building and kills them. And this is a pretty horrible thing just by itself. But the story goes that he then called all of their wives in and told them to sift through the ashes to find the bones of their husbands, which is like really weird. Like, why do you do that? That's just odd, right? Please stay and enjoy the crab rangoon. Right, yeah, just stay for a while and I'll just burn down the building that you're in, and then I'm going to call your wife and tell her to sift through this rubble and find your bones. Weirdest party game ever. Right? Find your husband's femur. It's weird, and he manages to get rid of some of the bad guys or not the bad guys, but a lot of his opponents in that way, and then he's going to fight a few other battles here or there to sort of solidify his control over the territory. But this is going to be the beginning of the Nanjiao Kingdom, and this is typically given the start date of 738. Now, what do they do for the rest of the 8th century? Well, they're mostly going to side with Tibet. Now, if you were with us previously, you'll know that Tibet and China kind of have this beef during the 700s where Tibet gets a pretty big leg up against the Chinese. And one of the reasons that Tibet is able to do so is because Nanjiao sort of signs on to be their ally. Now, there's a big debate in this, and that is, was Nanjiao independent and in an alliance with Tibet, or were they a vassal kingdom of Tibet? And this is sort of difficult to tell. You're going to find people that are on both sides of the debate. I think that it's probably likely that they were a paying tributary vassal, but got to pick their own government, if that makes sense. So, like, you get to pick your own government, you pick your king, you do your thing, you run your country, but every year you better be paying us the tribute. And if we call for your army, you don't really have an option but to show up. I think that's probably provable. There's a little bit of vagary there. And it's okay, right? Because we don't have to know everything about history. Find your husband, win a prize. What do I win? Something to bury. God, that's bleak. Find your husband's ash and dust. You all, with the dark humor, it slays me. So they're going to enter an alliance with Tibet, and they're going to be in an alliance with Tibet all the way up until 794. And Tibet is going to start being a little bit more interested in other parts of the world, especially expanding into Central Asia and in northern India by that time. So with the Tang Chinese being less of a threat, it doesn't seem that big of a deal to kind of let Nanzhao go back to being more or less fully independent, right? That just makes sense. So what else are we going to do then? Well, this is where we're going to start expanding. And my lovely wife mentioned, and we can show the map here again, that they were just north of the Pua city-states. Now, if you've been in streams previous, we have talked about the Pua city-states multiple times. Heilan was a large one. Sri Kshetra was a large one. And they're here along this river system that runs in what is modern-day Myanmar. Isn't it Burma? That's a reference to Seinfeld. Anyway, they're going to start expanding down this way. Now, if you read the notes or the history that comes out of Nanzhao, you're going to hear about these great battles where they went down into Myanmar and they conquered all of this territory. And they deported all of these people. Like they brought back thousands of captives, and they subjugated these cities to the larger Nanzhao Empire. The problem with that is it's not really backed up very much by archaeology. Now, could there have been some big battles? Absolutely. Is there clear connection, culturally speaking, between this group of people and the Nanzhao people and the Pua city-states? Absolutely. Was it a period of time where Nanzhao was significantly politically stronger than the Pua city-states? Absolutely, because let's remember that again, or this might be the first time you've ever heard of the Pua city-states, they were not a unified political group. They were much more like, they were city-states, right? They had similar culture, but they were just as likely to fight against each other as they were with somebody on their same side. So, it does look like there was some fighting, but there's not really a lot of evidence that Nanzhao came down and conquered all of these areas and formally subjugated them and brought them into their imperial control. Metran says, been having a bit of a rough time mentally. I'm sorry to hear that, Metran. Had to give up on an essay with it. Ooh, yeah. Again, rough decision, but you got to pick your battles. I understand. Better to rest up and come back at it. Absolutely. Metron, I know I said this before, but if you ever need even just to talk, find me on Discord. And this goes for everybody, right? If you ever need somebody to talk to, I'll even just sit and listen. Even if you just need to vent about crap or something like that. And I know that you all are also all adults, and you're capable of handling your own problems, and I'm not trying to diminish your ability to handle your stuff. But if you need somebody, let somebody know, right? It doesn't bother me at all. I appreciate helping people out. It's kind of my thing, right? So, sorry to hear that you're having a hard time, and I definitely understand how defeating it is sometimes to have to give up on a research project and ask for a redo or an extension. I have been in that situation before, and it's not fun. So you have my empathy and my sympathy. And if you ever want to bounce ideas off somebody, shoot me some ideas too. I'd be happy to. You're probably more advanced in your particular area than I would know, but I could at least tell you if it makes logical sense, right? Anyway. So, did they conquer the Pua city-states? Probably not. But did they beat the junk out of them and take a bunch of their stuff? That's probably true. And one way or the other, they're more or less done with their Pua city-state activities by the 830s. They say that they conquer them in 832, and they bring back all these thousands of captives in 832. But the archaeology record continues at a lot of these sites for another, several decades and several centuries for a couple of other places. So it's not like they went down there and destroyed the Pua city-states. This is probably just them bragging about something that didn't actually happen. That's how it goes. All right. What about Annan? So there's another region called Annan. And Annan is, at this time, part of China. And this was going to be a big one. So it's sort of like right around in this region, right? So the capital of China at that time was right about here. So them expanding in this region is getting a little bit close to China's heartland, and they don't really like that very much. But there is a big series of battles that stretches for about 20 years. I think it's like 17 or 18 years. It runs from 846 to 846 to 863. And there are some really big clashes here, big armies, really brutal battles, and they're going to end up Nanzhao taking this region from China. It was a big deal, right? A big deal. So people are laughing. What's going on? Sometimes I suffer from imposter syndrome, but then I just tell myself that I'm not good enough to have imposter syndrome, so I get on with it. There we go. I thought the capital of China was C. Chengdu, sure. Luoyang was an older version of it. Anyang was another one. Capital of China has been a lot of different places. But we are going to go off and we're going to conquer us a part of China. It's a pretty big deal, though. It's a very brutal fight, and China gets really ticked off at this. And China is going to try to counterattack, and they send a big army in and cause a bunch of damage. And Nanzhao at that point, and this is like in the late 860s, 868, 869, they're going to go, okay, well, if you're going to counterattack us, we're just going to come. We're just going to bring the whole group. And they actually attack the Chinese capital city at Chengdu. And they get all the way to the walls of the city and lay siege to it. And they fight a month-long siege battle where the Chinese army is outside, and then the Nanzhao army is sort of in a donut around the city, and then the Chinese city of Chengdu is behind the walls. Now, this is a bad spot to be, tactically speaking, because you've got, enemies all around you in all directions. And they don't end up winning this battle, but it's kind of a black eye to China regardless, because, it's not good to have the former client kingdoms get an army together and march up into your territory and get within just this much of taking your capital, right? It's not so great. It's not so great. Now, the problem with a lot of this expansion, as we all know, is that you expand really fast and then stuff happens and you're not able to solidify your control. So by the time we get to the late 800s, the Empire of Nanzhao is sort of falling apart. And when we get to the very end, we get the last of the emperors. Nope. Whose name is Shun Huazhen. And he looks like this. Again, with the big old hat and the really cool tassels coming out of the hat. It's not Cthulhu things. And I know this is a bad picture. This is a photograph of a piece of art that was done on silk screen, so it's not the best preserved piece of art anyway, and the photo is kind of crappy. But anyway, this is Shun Huazhen, who is the last of the Nanzhao emperors. And he had a pretty bad go of things, mostly internal rebellions. He's actually going to end up getting assassinated by his own ministers. And when that happens, the empire sort of splits back up into smaller units. This is at the very end of it's at the transition between the 9th century and the 10th century. So just over the line into the 10th century. You'd kill for that hat. I mean, it's a pretty powerful looking hat. That's easily as big as your head. And it's pretty cool. But they had a thing for these big crowns, these big sort of towering crowns. I guess I can go ahead and show you this, but yeah, sure, why not? Okay, this is a little bit ahead because I was going to talk about talk about this in a different context, but again, you can see like the big tall crown here. So this is another king named Shizhong Shan. The hat is a head. It's a big old hat, and it's got these great flowery tassels behind it. This is a relief at a place called Yimushun, and it's a big sort of rock temple, and they have these really great carvings on it like this. I was going to talk about this particularly in the aspect of their art and their culture, but I mean, we're already looking at it, so why not talk about it? They have really cool art and culture. This is clearly Buddhist influence, and religiously speaking, they were going to have a pretty big push towards Buddhism during the 8th century. Specifically in the 820s, the 9th century. In the 820s, Buddhism is going to show up, and over the course of the 9th century, Buddhism is really going to expand a lot. So you're going to start seeing a lot more of these really clearly Buddhist-influenced sculptures and stuff like that. But this is really cool relief. So again, this is in bas relief, so it sticks out from the wall. Really cool stuff here. I would love to go see all of this. Unfortunately, this region of China is, it's still in China. This is not too far from a place called Dali, which was their old capital. And I'll show you some more stuff here in just a second. But anyway, Sun Huashen gets killed. Technically he gets assassinated, but,
that's what happens.
You didn't know that Peggy Bundy was a secret Chinese emperor. Maybe. -10 social credit score to Shane. What did I do? What did I make are you upset with the NSYNC reference? Or I don't know what I did, Moose. Feel free to tell me why I get -10 social credit score. I'm so far in the negative right now. You said it's in China, and that's bad, but that's also true. So it's in the Yunnan province. It's right down here. I mean, if we put on the modern borders, where's my modern borders? Yeah, see, this is Yunnan province, and there's Dali right there. I couldn't see it because it was in China. I mean, I'm not going to go to China. That's the thing. Like, I would not travel to China given the political situation that exists inside of China right now. I don't really think that it would be a welcoming location for me. Other people can think other things, and I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't go to China. I'm just saying that I'm not going to go to China. I think it's more the way that you said, unfortunately, it's in China, which is still in China. Oh, social credit score. Because in China, they actually have a social credit system. I get the joke now. Because you're not supposed to say bad things about China in China, or you lose social credit score in China. I get the joke. Thank you, Moose. I appreciate it. Schmonite's going in April. Holy crap. Are you going for work? Or are you going as a vacation? Schmonite, I'm interested. Unfortunately, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's in China that is in China, which means it's in China and I can't go. Well, I mean, I guess I could go. Mr. Schmo's family is there. Hong Kong. Oh, no. Are you going to Hong Kong? That's even maybe worse than, like, mainland China. Ooh. Schmonite. Ooh. You'll be okay. You are going to go as a tourist. Things are going to be okay for you. You're going to stay in Hong Kong. You're not going to be rabble rousing. You're not going to join any of the protests. You're not going to try to smuggle in a whole bunch of money. You're going to be fine. My problem would be I would want to go to all of the places that are really far out in the middle of nowhere, where the central government is super duper corrupt, and I would want to see all of the stuff that they don't want to let people into, and I would be in the places where I would get in trouble. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. I would go to Hong Kong before I would try to go to Dali, if that makes any sense. You'll be fine. My first reaction was, holy crap, there's a lot of politics going on over there, which there is. Seize the White China. Exactly. I would be very evidently in the crowd. And after all of the negative things that I've said about, the Chinese government on stream here, I might not even get off the airplane before they get me. Especially when Ping Shiji realizes that I won't say Xi Jinping anymore. But that's me trying to be a little insulting. Never mind. We don't even have to get into that. Culture, though. What's up with the culture? So again, they have a mix of ethnicities in Nanzhao, which is pretty cool. They have Yi people, they have Bai people, they have all kinds of groups of people in this region. We don't really know a lot about what the ruling family was. There's some people that say that they were sort of Chinese a couple of generations back and had kind of gone native. Some people say that they were just local people that got power from the Chinese and then transitioned into, actual political power. But clearly there are multiple people groups living in this area, right? Nobody's going to argue about that. A lot of the theories about the ruling class being sort of Chinese by extraction comes from the fact that most of the political documents were written in Chinese. But that's not even necessarily that big of a deal for ethnic groups. Of course, China is going to claim that all of these people were clearly Chinese because modern China says that everybody that had anything to do with ancient China was Chinese. But in the ancient world, if you were a client kingdom of China, your court language was probably going to be Chinese anyway. So we can't necessarily base anything factual off of the concept that, they wrote all of their official documents in Chinese. I mean, so did Japan for hundreds of years. Does that mean everybody in Japan was Chinese? Clearly not, right? Korea used Chinese language for a lot of stuff. It was a lingua franca of the region, right? It was the Greek of the Asian world at that time. Lots of people knew how to write in Chinese. You do see some stuff happening internally on inscriptions and temples and stuff that's written in the native Bai language, which is credit that I would put more faith in, that they probably spoke a lot more of the local Bai language than they did Chinese. They probably knew, again, a lot of people in the ancient world are way more bilingual than we are today in modern world, or trilingual or multilingual. Right, so they could probably speak Chinese and Bai, and for most things local, they probably use their local language, and then when they got into like governmental fancy schmancy stuff, switched over to Chinese or something of that nature. Again, this is very common, and we don't really find a lot of surprising stuff in this area. Religiously, though, we do have a really cool, interesting religious atmosphere. So prior to the arrival of Buddhism, there are going to be several different types of religion in the area. One of the more interesting one is called Bimoism, which is a little kind of a niche religion that is indigenous to the region here, and you all know how much I enjoy religions. This one's really cool. It's pretty neat. So this comes from the names of the priests. They were a priestly sect who kind of ran the religion, and they did a mix of animism, which of course is like we worship the spirits and things, like we fire spirits or tree spirits or earth spirits. But they also did ancestor worship, which is fairly common, right? But what's really neat about this ancestor worship aspect is that they have this. And again, if anybody out there practices Bimoism as their official religion, please understand that I love studying religion, but when I talk about stuff on stream, I try to make things as approachable as possible, so I do oversimplify things. So it's more complicated than this, but it's an interesting idea. And if you want to go study more of this, go look it up. But roughly speaking, the belief is that you have two parts of a soul, or maybe you have two souls, and one of them is sort of attached to your body, and one of them is more kind of free ranging. So when you die, one of the spirits that is sort of more or less your identity is going to stay with your body as a way to sort of protect it and tie your life experiences back to the real world. And the other spirit in your body is going to reincarnate. So you kind of get a little bit of both. You get a little bit of the reincarnation thing, but you also get a little bit of the, let's go to Grandpa's grave and make sure that we take care of Grandpa because his spirit's still there. It's really fascinating, and I really like that sort of, it's like a religious mechanism that allows for both to happen easily. Because if you look at, like, even if you look at, like Buddhism, right? If your ancestor dies in Buddhism, their spirit reincarnates, or they become, ascendant and they go on to nirvana, whatever version of that you mean. But then that means their spirit is completely gone, or it's been reborn into another body, and they're not really your ancestor anymore. Now they're sort of somebody else's ancestor. But with Bimoism, you kind of get the both. You get a little bit of, granddad's still over there, and also, we have a new kid in the family. That could be Granddad reborn. Pretty interesting stuff. You could stumble on your own grave, both be inside and outside of it. Metrand, I did not think of that, but that is fascinating and also really cool. I stumbled across my own grave, a story of Bimoism. And we still do huge tomb sweeping holidays. Yeah, exactly, right? Where you go out to the cemeteries where you sweep off all of the tombs, right? So there's some really cool stuff that's going on in Bimoism. It's a really interesting religion. There are still some people that practice this even today. Now, it's not a very big religion, and of course we all know that inside of China, doing any sort of religion is suspect, especially if it's not one that is kind of on the list of approved official Chinese religions. So, there's not a lot of people that practice this that are still around, but there are still some. And it's pretty neat to talk about. Now, when they convert over to Buddhism, again, this is happening starting in the 820s, but carries through most of the 800s. They're going to develop kind of their own little brand or flavor, if you will, of Buddhism that's called Aishali. And it's spelled like that. It just occurred to me that some future historian discussing religion in the UK in the 21st century was going to have to say, so there was this film called Star Wars. Because you can officially be a Jedi in the UK as your stated religion. That's great. That's going to be really fun. That's really fun. It might not be as far in the future as you think it is either. I referenced MySpace today in class, and nobody in the class knew what MySpace was. And, that really started making me feel old. I mean, I feel old all the time anyway. Yeah, no one knew Tom. Exactly, right? So, explaining what Star Wars was might not be as far in the future as you think. Now, assuming Disney doesn't keep just churning out Star Wars material at a rapid pace, which I'm sure that they're going to do as long as they continue to make money off of it. But yeah, nobody knew what MySpace was in class. And what's crazy is that wasn't even my first social media platform. I had a Zanga blog account way back in the day. So I'm like, does anybody know what Zanga? Because we were talking about, we got on the topic of dating and how, dating is sort of a process of determining who we are as a person, whether or not we want to be in a relationship with somebody or not. And they asked me about my dating history, and I was talking about how back when I was around, you had to actually meet and talk to people because you didn't have instantaneous communication, right? So you had a DARPANET email. Oh, Schmonite, that's amazing. Dude, I would love to have that brag. That is great. That is great. Oh, that's back in the good old days, right? I mean, I remember message boards, right? Just like actual full text-based message boards where you had to know the specific IP address to get there. You couldn't just like Google it because there was no such thing as Google. Like I remember pre-Google internet where you had to know exactly where you were going to get there, right? Like I even like before Alta Vista, even before Yahoo, I remember the internet when it was like you got a URL that someone gave you on a piece of paper, and then you were typing your 3-dot address in to get there, right? How old are the people in the class? I'm too young to have used MySpace, but at least I know about it. Yeah, the students in my class are mostly 18 or 19. 18 or 19. I teach mostly college freshmen and college sophomores. There are occasionally people that are a little bit older. I think the oldest student that I've ever had at my current job was like 34 or 35. And they had done multiple tours in the military and had come out the other side and were going back to school on the government. In America, if you join the military and stay for a certain amount of time, they'll pay for your college. So this particular student had done multiple tours with the Navy and, spent, I think, 10 or so years in the Navy and came out and was getting stuff. So the first-time student, but older student, right? So internet companies would send you CDs in the mail. What's CD? What's a mail? Don't worry about that, right? What's a landline? Yeah, all of that. I got floppy disk internet. Yep. I remember all of that stuff. I was there. I was ticking people off when the Sci-Fi Channel had a message, or I'm sorry, a giant group chat that it used to run in, and what was it? An IRC chat, right? Way back in the day when sci-fi-channel.com had an IRC message board. Yep. King's Quest 1. Woo! I used to have the original King's Quest that was on 6 different floppy disks, and it was really annoying because you'd move to one screen and it would be like, please insert disk 2, and you had to put disk 2 in. And then you realize, crap, I forgot to pick the thing up from the last screen, so you'd have to go back. It's like, please insert disk 4. You had to put disk 4 back in. I was like, crap. Yep, irc.sci-fi.com, that's it, back in the day. Anyway, we're way off track, but that's okay. That's what we do here, right? 14.4 was the latest and the greatest. What's up? How's it going? You didn't understand the look of it. Yeah. I think Twitch is... Yeah, so the stuff that's in Twitch chat is actually pretty close to IRC. Pretty close. We could play today about loading screens, right? And back in my day, you had to wait 5 minutes for a JPEG to load. Yep. Tuna slaps. Oh, good times. Good times with the tuna slaps. Anyway, let's continue about Ajali. So the Buddhism that took root in Nanzhao was a very heavily Indian influenced Buddhism, and the version that they practiced, Ajali, was very much a derivative of the larger Vajrayana Buddhist movement, which was sort of getting developed during this period of time. This sort of 9th century is where the roots of Vajrayana Buddhism is really starting to get put down, both over in Tibet and northern India and here also in Nanzhao. And the connection between Tibet and northern India and Nanzhao is not to be overlooked in this particular area. There's the tradition of monks from different areas moving around and bringing with them their teachings and such. And there were Indian Buddhists that had come over to Nanjiao to set up some stuff. So they have a neater little version here. And Vajrayana is heavily influenced by Hinduism. They do a lot of mandala stuff. So a mandala is just sort of an image of the universe, and you're supposed to sort of meditate while looking at this image of the universe as a way to help you understand the way that you fit into the universe. And again, this is sort of simplified stuff, but roughly speaking, they're also going to be a little bit more open to writings that are not purely Buddhist in nature, like some of the stuff like the Bhagavad Gita, which is not really a Buddhist text, it's a Hindu text, but it's got some stuff in there that you might be interested in if you are in the Vajrayana sect of Buddhism. Lots of meditation, lots of stuff. There's also Tantra, which is kind of getting involved in Vajrayana. But anyway, that's all kind of happening right now, and I could, again, sort of tangent off into talking about Southeastern Asian religions for quite a bit, right? I converted a globally known military contractor from 110 baud to 300 baud. Wow. Schmonite, you win the Back in My Day group. KP, is that you trying to make the noises that a 14.4K modem would make as it connected to the internet? It's like... I know what you're talking about. But anyway, again, back to the art thing. That's why you start seeing a lot of this looking art. It's pretty clearly got a lot of Indian influence and Buddhist influence. Let me say hey to people. I haven't said hey to people the right way that I needed to. We've seen some people come in. Sleepless Ninja, welcome in. Hope you're having a good one. Good to see you. Moose2271, good to see you, my friend. Theo Rex, how's it going? Hope that things are treating you nicely. Glad to see everybody, really seriously. And for those of you that are just hanging out and doing the lurk thing, I'm glad to see you too. Or at least I'm glad to speak in your general direction, and I hope that you all are having wonderful days as well. So, Nanjiao, pretty cool. One more thing about them. They had this particular group named the Luojuzi. All good, winding down, so it came in here. And I'm over here giggling like an idiot and getting everybody wound back up again. But thanks for coming by. So who are the Luojuzi? This is really kind of cool. In their military, they had an elite military unit called the Luojuzi. And who are they? Well, this is kind of cool. So first off, there was an admissions process to even get in. And the way that you got in was the military leaders would make groups of 100 soldiers, and you had to be the best soldier out of that 100 soldiers. So if you had to fight to prove that, you would have to do so. They probably know who the best one was, or at least who the top ones were. But if you were in the top position of the 100 people, you got to join the elite Luojuzi. And they had special armor that was red and very, very visible. And they also went into battle barefoot, which is kind of weird when you think about it, but interesting. Posted a video in Photos or Videos called All Old Modern Sounds, 300 baud to 56K. Wow. I want to be the very best. Exactly, right? And so to get in, you had to be really good. But there were these really, really strict rules. And the strictest one was your armor only covered the front part of you. And if you went into battle and received wounds, it was perfectly okay because you're expected to get hurt. But if you got wounded anywhere on your back, you were immediately executed upon the discovery, which is kind of crazy, right? Like the impetus here is the Luo Juzi do not turn their back to the enemy, right? And if you do turn your back to the enemy and receive a wound in the back, you are unworthy of being in the Luo Juzi, which is kind of cool and worthy of maybe a comic book or an anime or something like that. But just a neat little thing that I thought that I would share because I really like this little culture. And I say little, I mean they had thousands of people living in it, but short time frame. Going to be adapting this into your D&D setting, right? See, this is why history is so great, because you have these great little stories, these great little nuggets of history that work so well into other things, right? I've worked with a few different people who are in the process of building intellectual property universes of their own. And one of the things that I really love to do is, okay, tell me what you need. And they'll say like, well, I'm trying to figure out what kind of level of civilization this group would be. And I start spouting stuff off. I'm like, well, here's how you're going to have to set that up. And here's how to make this logistic. And here's how to make this work and da-da-da-da-da. And I was going to do that actually as an organized side hustle. I was going to basically help people do world building with just history stuff. And cultural references and weird little nuggets of history like that. But it never got off the ground because I got super depressed, and then, COVID was overwhelming, and then work got overwhelming, and it just never happened because I felt like I didn't have the time to commit to it. But if you ever have any questions about how to do world building, or if you want to get a little weird reference from history that will help you do some stuff, let me know. I've worked with several artists that have said, hey, I need some help with some stuff. And I've been happy to do a world building stream. I mean, if you want to, I guess. I don't know exactly how we would work that. Or who would own that then?
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
JMR.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
JMR Killer. Thank you so much for that subscription, my friend. Thank you once again for being Spartacus. How's it going, my friend? Hope you're having a good one. I can't remember the last time I was in your stream. Oh, I do. I was very quietly lurking when you were building the high grade Strike Freedom, which looks really nice. Really good stuff. I always suspected JMR was Spartacus. It's the chin, right? If you're not already following my buddy JMR Killer, you should be, because he plays games and has some fun doing that stuff. Also builds models. Also builds Legos. Or Lego. I was informed a few months ago that the plural of Lego is also Lego. There's no such thing as Legos, which, I was wrong my entire life, but that's what it is. So, there we go. You have some friends who run an audiobook company with connections to a bunch of authors. I should introduce you. Yeah, that'd be great. I've actually really... I've always sort of thought it would be cool to do audiobooks. Because I can do weird voices and stuff like that, and I thought it would always be fun to do audiobooks. And I thought about recording some stuff for LibriVox, which is a website where you can go download a whole bunch of free audiobooks. So everything that is on the page LibriVox is in the public domain, and you can just find something that you want to and read it. And I've often thought that I should do some of that just to see how it would work and if I'd actually enjoy it, and put it up and see if people responded positively to it. So maybe I'll do that. But then I have all these ideas of things that would be cool to do, and then I don't actually ever do any of it, because I was explaining this earlier today in Vipers. There's like a 3-level Venn diagram, And on one of them, it says free time. And on the other one, it says mental acuity. And then on the other one, it says give a crap. And those three so rarely overlap in my world. Like, I'll have free time and I'll give a crap, but I can't think about it because my mental acuity is gone. Or I'll have the mental acuity and I'll really want to work on it, but I don't have the time. Right? But every now and then the world will align and I'll have all three of those going, and I like to do that. If it's Lego, if it's the same time of Lego, I'm not even going to finish that. My world building is basically just map making right now. Don't have enough energy to write lots of stuff outside of studies at the moment, but you can always design the maps. Absolutely. I've drawn maps before. I used to draw maps for fun when I was a kid just because. But it is time to move on. So that was the Nanjiao people, and I hope that you all maybe something kicked around in your brain and you're like, I'm going to look those people up, and it's cool to know about these people because they existed. They have this really cool culture, just not for super terribly long. Now, they don't completely go away, like the people don't evaporate, but their culture gets absorbed into a lot of other people's cultures. So let's move a little bit further south to the Khmer. All right, so we're going to move down this way, to right around in here. Sitting with a stupidly intricate town map for a town in your D&D setting that won't be relevant to anything for a while, but fun to do. Yeah, I tend to go overboard when I do prep for RPGs. I know exactly what you're talking about, Metroid. I'll build entire scenarios and thought processes and choice trees that the players will never even find, and then I got to find some way to work that back around if they don't do it, because like I'm not going to waste all of that effort. I'm just going to try to like move these scenarios to later in the game. Anyway, I like doing dungeon mastering stuff too. I was talking about that earlier with the mods and with my wife. I miss playing RPGs some. I wish I could run a game right now. I wish I had the mental acuity and the time and the give a crap to run a game. Been a bit busy actually, but you played D&D for the first time. It was great. Oh, that's cool, JMR. I'm glad that you had some fun with it. All right, so right down here in the Southeastern Asian Peninsula, or Indochina, if you want to use the French term, we get the Khmer Empire. And if we look at them around this time period, they're going to be this region here in the dark red. Now, this is, of course, a little bit later. This is around the year 900 where we'll end up, but I figured I'd go ahead and show you this right away. They're mostly going to start kind of in this region right around over here, and they're going to conquer all this stuff as we go. Also, I could spend a lot of time tonight talking about the Khmer Empire and their origins and the cultures that they spawned out of. We've talked about some of this before on stream in the past, but we've actually had an entire stream just on the Khmer. Now I gotta sneeze. Okay. So if you go back to the viewer request stream, the collection, you can actually watch an entire stream just on the Khmer Empire. So I'm not going to do the whole thing again here. I will refer you to the VOD. Now, be warned, the VOD is back when I was really first getting started, and things look a little bit sketchier, and I didn't have the lights, and I didn't have a good camera, and I didn't have this stuff behind me, and I also didn't have a good computer, so everything was very grainy. I streamed the first probably 50 episodes of the stream off of a 12-year-old Dell laptop, and it was rough. It was pretty bad. It was choppy and the resolution was horrible, but the information is still good, right? So let's talk about the Khmer Empire, and specifically we're going to start with the guy who put it together, and his name is Jayavarman. And specifically, he's Jayavarman II. That was Mulder's favorite part of history. Scully, come here, look at this. Jayavarman II. He is going to be the guy that is responsible for putting all this stuff together. So first off, he was a king in what is modern-day Cambodia, and he was of Chinla origin. Now, if you've been around the stream before when we've talked about Southeastern Asia, you'll know more about the Chinla, but for those that haven't, the Chinla were a native group of people that controlled especially this sort of central region of this peninsula. Now, on the side over here, we have several different kingdoms like the Da Viet, and we have the Champa group over here along the coastline. But here in the middle, we have the Chinla. And they were fairly numerous. They had cities that were sort of both inland and here along the coast, and there was a little bit of cultural division between the coastal group and the inland group. But roughly speaking, they're kind of the same group of people. Now, there's a potential interest here, and we'll actually talk about this a little bit later. We'll kind of come back to it. But they might have been under the control of a big kingdom that was down in Java and Sumatra called the Srivijaya. But we don't know that for 100%. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, though. But we do know at some point around 802-ish, he is going to declare himself Deva Raja, which is really interesting because this is using Hindu words, and Deva Raja means the God King. And this is a title that other Hindu kings from India had used, and he's going to do this at a really sacred site and declare himself the God King. And this is basically going to say, I'm independent and nobody else has control over me. Me tomorrow. I think he said Khmer was ruled by a giant varmint. No, he was a pretty cool guy. Or at least, I mean, as leaders go, he wasn't the worst. He is going to do a lot of expansion. And he's going to establish the first capital, this place called Hariharalaya. It's not going to stay there very long. It's going to get moved by a couple of rulers later, to a place called Angkor, which is where we end up with the Angkor Empire. But we'll talk about that in just a second. But again, this guy is very clearly a Hindu, and the region of the Khmer Empire is going to be Hindu for quite some time. Really interesting that they stay Hindu, and a lot of the other areas are becoming much more Buddhist. So if you look at China and Tibet and Nanzhao, they had all sort of given over to Buddhism, whereas down here in Southeast Asia, we've got a little pocket of very strong Hindu connection. Declaring oneself God King seems a pretty good way to get authority. I should try it sometime. Metran, if you did that, I would support you. I would declare my allegiance as a vassal of the God King. I don't know what that would do. I could bring my, my dozens and dozens of Twitch viewers to stream with you. Right? I've got tens and tens of viewers. Give it a shot. You never know, right? Maybe you can get officially recognized. So, Jayavarman II, interesting dude. He rules from 802 to 835. He's going to be the guy that establishes the Khmer Empire as independent. If we fast forward a little bit to the 890s, we're going to end up with a king named Yasovarman. And this guy is going to be the guy that really gives us what we could sort of modern day consider the modern capital of Angkor, the emperor. I guess I should type this because I'm saying it right. So if you've ever heard of the big temple Angkor Wat, that's where we get this word from, right? Yasovarman is going to move the capital to this new city that he built, and the actual name of the city is Yasodarapura, but Angkor is a lot easier to say than Yasodarapura. But specifically, there's a big temple there that was going to be kind of like the religious center of the empire. And if we look at the photo here, this is the original gateway. This is about all that is left standing. The original name of the temple is Angkor Pnom. But it's a pretty cool looking place. There's sort of more like stuff back there, like foundation wise, but it is what we got. So that's, again, it's Angkor, and I think I said Angkor Pnom, but it's the name of, I don't know why I said that. The name of the temple is Phnom Bakheng. And yeah, so their art and culture is again fairly similar to the Nanzhao to the north, in that it's a little bit of a mix. We've got a little bit of influence from India. We've got a little bit of influence from China. We've got some Hindu influence and some Buddhist influence. So religiously speaking, they're going to be mostly Hindu. But they're going to speak their own language, which is this language called Old Khmer. And it's going to be really heavily influenced by the Sanskrit language from India. This is mostly because they're going to have a lot of trade contact with India. This is going to be both over land and at sea. There's a lot of sea trade that's happening sort of in this larger Southeastern Asian world. And the Sri Vijaya down here, which we've talked about multiple times before on stream, is going to be sort of central to that. But any of the trade that's coming out of China and going over to India, or even coming as far away from Africa, is likely to float through the waters right here. And this sort of southern coastline is going to be a big deal, because it's going to be one of the first places that you pull into after you kind of get around the Malai Peninsula right here. So they're going to be very culturally exposed. They're going to have a lot of different people that are sort of on their way. Encore, we haven't even got to the main show. The Swedish word for ducks is Angkor, so you'll just pretend it's a duck temple. Well, this person's kind of doing duck lips. So there you go. This is a relief at Phnom Bakheng, the big temple there. So I figured I would show you this as an example of sort of the dress that you would see and the type of art style. You've got clear Hindu influences here, especially with like the holding of stuff and the hands and the way that the arms and the body are sort of not necessarily proportional or directly in line with the way that they should be. That the hips are a little bit offset from the shoulders, if you can see that. So like the shoulders are here and the hips are a little bit offset from that. This very Indian influence there. But pretty cool stuff. Really, really beautiful artwork. I'd love to go see all this stuff. And this is actually viewable. You can go to, well, I mean, like all of the stuff is technically viewable. This is a he. This is a guy. So there we go. Cambodia, Thailand, places like that, fairly easy to travel to. I'd love to go to Cambodia. Man, that would be so cool. Ugh, that'd be great. I would really enjoy going over to Cambodia. So again, we could talk much more about the Khmer Empire, and I have talked before extensively about the Khmer Empire. I would encourage you to go check out the VOD. The name of the VOD is Turned Down for Wat, and it's W-A-T, like Angkor Wat, which I thought was pretty funny. So there you go. Go check it out. I think it's number 7. Which one is this? Adventures in History. Number 6. Viewer request number 6 is on the Khmer. Yeah, what the what? Exactly. I could have done that one. I didn't think about it, Shmonak. Holiday in Cambodia? I'd love to go to Holiday in Cambodia. It'd be very difficult to get there. That would be the roughest part. The plane tickets are probably way more expensive than the stay would be. But there's a lot of cool stuff to go see in Cambodia. Lots of cool history there. Anyway, so I'm not trying to shortchange the Khmer. We just need to get to the other stuff that we're going to talk about. before we run out of time. And I've already done a lot of stuff about Cambodia, but also the Khmer later on. Holiday in Cambodia. Oh, was that a joke and I missed it? I don't get the joke. I do have to sneeze again. Sorry about that. Song by the Dead Kennedys. I haven't heard that one. I'll have to give it a listen. I'll just have to give it a listen. All right, Green Herring, good to see you sneak in. Nintendo, what's up? Good to see you. Hope things are going well. All right, so that's Khmer. Moving along to our last group. Specifically here, we're going to talk about a group called the Shailendra Dynasty. Now, the Shailendra Dynasty is an interesting group here because they're going to start in one island and then conquer a whole bunch of stuff and end up on another island. So it's kind of weird to follow here, but let's look at the map. All right, so here we go. Now, originally, you can see down here on the island of Java, Shailendra. Now, they just have an S, but it's understood that this is an SH. So Shailendra is down here on the island of Java. Right? Now, the way that this works is kind of interesting because there's a king named Dara Indra. And I'll type his name when we get back over. And Dara Indra is of the Shailendra dynasty down here on Java. But in the 770s, he's going to marry one of the Srivijaya princesses, and that's going to give him a claim to the throne of Srivijaya. So at that point, Shailendra dynasty is going to control this part of the island of Java and this larger part of the island of Sumatra. But he's not going to be happy with just that. Instead, he's also going to end up taking over this part of the Malay Peninsula, and he's going to get up in here and start trying to attack in this area. So this guy does a lot, and he's going to set up his kingdom in a very powerful location, or position rather. I need to... Dharanendra. He's the guy that's doing all this stuff. So he rules from 775 to 780, which is not very long, but he's going to do a lot of stuff in that period of time. And if you'll remember me talking about Jayavarman II, the guy that started the Khmer Empire, how he might have been a vassal of this group down in the south. He could have potentially been a vassal of Dharanendra. We're not 100% sure about that, though. We know that Dharanendra went up into the region where the Khmer were and said that he won some battles and took over some territory there. Whether or not he actually took the territory, or again, if it was just, I went up there and beat you up and then, came back home, that's a different story. But what's interesting about this larger Shailendra dynasty here is that they are really, really dependent on naval power. This is going to be sort of weirdly, I don't like even saying weird. They're very unique in their power base in that they don't really have necessarily huge land armies because, again, they're mostly on islands, but they have these enormous navies. And these navies are going to not only offer military expansion as a way of making more money and expanding your influence, but they're also going to protect trade. And if we look at the map here, we've got all sorts of little straits, right? These little narrow straits of water where people moving from one location to another are going to want to move between. And especially this region right here, this is what's called the Strait of Malacca. This is really strategically important because if you are floating from India to China, you want to move through this little region right here because otherwise you're going to have to go around the big back island of Sumatra and then you're going to have to come through here. But it just so happens they control that strait as well. So pretty much if you're going to float from over here to over here, you're going to go through their territory. And you're not going to get through without paying your taxes because, again, giant honking navy. You just can't get around them. They're everywhere. They will chase you down. They will board your ship. They will take their taxes from you in payment or in kind. They're going to get their money. And this is really cool because you see them standing up to these much larger land empires, right? China has to pay their taxes when they move through this area. China's an enormous land power, but by comparison, their navy can't really stand up to the Shailendra dynasty. It's just not something that they can do because they're just not in the position to be as powerful as a naval force. That's really cool stuff. I like it a lot, but it's not just doing that. These groups are also really, really cool. They're going to so Dharanendra is going to convert to Buddhism. And this is going to be a big deal because Hinduism previously had been the more dominant power in this area. India had a much larger influence in that region previously, historically speaking. Some of the oldest inscriptions that we find from any of the any of the political entities in this area are written in, Indian Sanskrit, right? So they're using local words, but they're using the alphabet of Sanskrit to write them. So there's been this history of really powerful Indian influence in this region. And them converting to Buddhism is going to be a little bit because, again, we're having this Chinese influence as they're trading from the other direction, right? They're bringing stuff in from, so China's up here, they're coming down this way, but India's over here, they're sending stuff this way. And we get this neat little mix. But they're really going to go all in on the Buddhism thing. And they're going to spend a lot of time building stuff. You see all sorts of really cool temples. You see all kinds of really neat pieces of artwork and stuff like that. But let me show you one particular temple. This is a place called Borobudur, and it is on the island of Java. And I have a photo of it here, which doesn't really do it justice. All right, so here's some people here, and here's this giant temple. And it's got 9 different layers all up here to this big main central stupa. And it's enormous. This is the largest Buddhist temple on Earth. But it's more impressive than just that. So let me, I just messed up my Google Earth here. Let me reposition that. So let's go look at this thing from space, because this is really friggin' cool. All right, so here it is. And it is built like a mandala. So again, when you look at this, it has these different rings and these different concentric pieces because this is supposed to represent the construction of the world and the universe, because this is, again, part of this Buddhist thing. But check this out, and I confirmed this earlier. We can walk all around this. And you could pick any of the little levels and walk all around this on Google Earth, which is really friggin' cool. And it'll take a little while to catch up. But you can see how each one of these levels is just a little bit different, artistically speaking. We've got a little bit of a different theme here, a little bit of a different one up there. Really cool stuff. And I would encourage you to spend some time poking around on this if you want to spend a few minutes just looking at some neat stuff. we'll go here to the walkway and kind of look at the front view of it. It's enormous, and it's really freaking cool. So this is built by the Shailendra dynasty, who's ruling Java and the Malay Peninsula and the big part of the island of Sumatra. It's not actually too long after this that they finished building this in the 830s. And then they actually lose control of Java. So they spent all the time building this giant temple, and then they actually lose control of the region after some internal arguments with some of their vassals. But I mean, just look at how big this thing is. It's really, really cool. And you can walk up it and into it and around all the little levels. Google Earth is amazing. If you're not using Google Earth already, it's free. Why not, right? Really cool stuff. Hey, cool. Thanks for building that giant temple in preparation for taking us. Yeah, it's I mean, they control that area and then they lose it. One of their vassals rebels, and they lose control of the island of Java. But that's just a really cool temple. And again, the biggest Buddhist temple on Earth is right there on the island of Java. Another cool thing to go see, right? Another cool thing to go see. Borobudur. Stupid cool stuff. But all right, that's going to bring us to the conclusion of this discussion. So we've talked about 3 different groups tonight. We talked about the Nanjao, who are here. We talked about the Khmer, and then we talked about the Srivijaya or Shailendra dynasty, which ruled these regions right around in here. Southeastern Asia has really cool history. Don't sleep on Southeastern Asian history. Super cool culture, really beautiful art, well documented history, and absolutely worth giving a study to. Absolutely worth it. If you want to know why the British and the French spent so much time trying to control this area, at one point in time, about 40% of the entire world's economy floated through this little strip of water right here during the height of the Indian and Chinese trade routes under the Mughal Empire. It was a massive amount of wealth in this region. So don't get off the history tour bus and spend some time in some of these areas where they don't necessarily get a lot of frequent love. Really cool stuff over there. But at this point, I'm sort of done with my version of stuff, or my side of stuff. So do we have any questions? Does anybody want to redeem any stream points or anything like that? I'd be happy to happy to answer any questions. Hope everybody's doing well. Again, thanks everybody for coming on out. I'm not going to bail out right now, but I do appreciate everybody coming out. The end, go home, right? And not like that. On the 200th episode, so this is not like episode 200, but it's the 200th history talk that I've given here on Twitch. So heads up, the choose your own stream point redemption is still currently active. Oh, okay. Well, I should probably turn that off. I appreciate you letting me know that. I wouldn't have been super upset if somebody had redeemed it. We do have a viewer request stream coming up next Tuesday, though. And it was one that was redeemed. Our very own Lumpy Dragon Potato asked for a stream on the Teutonic Order. So we're going to talk about some knights on Tuesday. On Teutonic Tuesday. Hey! So what would have been the major driver for the spread of Buddhism? Was it monks spreading the word, military forcing people to convert, or was it just a status thing? That's a great question. There are not many forced military conversions happening at this time. The closest thing that we can look at that's kind of maybe that way is under the early leaders of Tibet that we talked about a couple of streams ago. Or was that last stream? Was that yeah, it was last Thursday. The Tibetan leader Sadnalegs didn't force people to convert with the military, but he did call all of his leaders together and make them sign this big pledge that said, I am a Buddhist and I will support Buddhism. But, I mean, that wasn't necessarily like a forced military conversion. And in a lot of situations, if you conquered a territory that wasn't Buddhist, you didn't really force Buddhism on there. Now, that isn't to say that in historical times people haven't been forced to convert to Buddhism. That absolutely does happen at various points in history. But at this time, there's not a lot of forced conversion. The other two, though, are very much in play. Because China was so big and because Tibet was so big, the status of being associated with Buddhism was much higher. And because of especially the relative stability of the early 800s, there's a lot of movement between these countries. Now, there's a lot of tumult and bad stuff in the late 700s, especially in China with the Anlushan Rebellion. But by the time you get to the latest part of the 700s, and especially the first few decades of the 800s, there's a lot of peace in these areas, and there's a lot of stability. This is when you see, like, the emperor in Tibet, Rinpoche, who's making peace treaties with everybody to sort of establish peace. The second emperor of Nanzhao is a pacifist who says that we should make peace with everybody. So with peace comes, interlocution. We're going to talk with each other a lot more. And that's when the monks really start moving around. There was a sort of almost a cottage industry of traveling monks. And if you came from a certain area and your sort of flavor of Buddhism was popular, you could make a living by going to some other emperor or some other empire and bringing a whole bunch of your Buddhist scriptures with you and copying a whole bunch of this stuff down, right? So like this is like last week when we were talking about how Sadnalegs ended up inadvertently standardizing Tibetan Buddhist or the Tibetan language because he was copying all of these Buddhist texts into Tibetan. This is the same sort of thing that's happening over in Japan, right? Where they're copying a whole bunch of Buddhist stuff, and the monks in the late 700s had become incredibly politically powerful in Japan. So you end up with the status of being associated with the leadership who were, broadly speaking, Buddhist, but also there's this happy period where people are just chill with each other, and when there's not a lot of war, there's much more travel. So that's a great question, and I hope that answered it. You're welcome to follow up with more specific questions if that didn't completely answer it. How's the situation with archaeological material in Southeastern Asia? From what I've heard, it's not the most ideal. It is not at all. You are absolutely correct. When it comes to physical culture, it is very difficult, especially for old Southeastern Asian cultures. Prehistoric stuff, if it's not stone, it doesn't really survive. The humidity there is going to destroy clothing. It's going to destroy wooden implements. Houses that aren't made out of stone are going to disintegrate really, really quickly. By the time you get to around the 900s BCE, you're going to start seeing more stuff that is around. People are going to start building stuff up off of the ground, especially things like tombs and buildings. So you're going to start seeing more of that. By the time you get to this period that we're talking about now, the 9th century, the current era, there's going to be quite a bit of stuff around, especially pieces of art. They're going to have really, really exquisite metalworking. There's going to be a lot of stone carving, lots of temples, lots of, monumental works and things like that. So there's going to be a lot more of that around. But honestly, like day-to-day living kind of stuff, it's still kind of hard to tell. We know that they farmed a lot of things because we can still see, you find a big jar full of this particular kind of wheat, and clearly that's what they were farming. But for things like individual, peasant clothing, we have to hope that we have a piece of art that shows that, and it's probably not going to be in color. We do have some boats from this time that have been discovered doing underwater archaeology, but it's a tough place to do archaeology. The relative humidity and the dampness of the soil combined with the heat of the area, it's so bad for preserving stuff. It just chews through everything, and it's really tough because the water table in the area is very, very high. So in some of these areas, you dig down 2 feet and you're in water, and it's not very conducive for long-term preservation. And it's not even like what we might call, archaeologically speaking, the good kind of water, like a peat bog in Wales or in Scotland, where it's wet but it's like completely anaerobic. It's just, there's no oxygen, it's just wet, and you can drop something in there and it'll be preserved perfectly for the next 500 years or something like that. It's not even that, it's just wet. Forced conversion is a Sith power. +5 faith, 3 free missionaries appear. Yeah, that's what happens when peace hits, right? Metrand, I hope that answered your question too. You're also welcome to follow up if that didn't exactly answer your question. Now, if you get down into some of the stuff on the islands, especially down here in what is modern day Indonesia, it's a little bit better for some of the places because the cities were typically built on elevated levels. So you're going to see some stuff that's built on much more solid rock and stuff like that, so you can get more things of that going on. But broadly speaking, not the best. Not saying that none of it exists, but it's hard to find a lot of stuff in a lot of the cases. Not been hearing a lot about it through my studies, so really interested in following along with Asia streams. Cool. You have some professors who've done a lot of work in and around Samoa. Yeah, we're approaching that, but it's still pretty far away. There's also a political block to accessing any of this. As weird as it might sound, Indonesia is very cooperative with archaeological stuff. They're actually trying to attract more. So Indonesia is a very interesting country because it has a lot of stuff working for it, and it has a lot of stuff that detracts from it. Indonesia is one of the most Muslim countries on earth. It has one of the largest populations of Muslim people on earth, and a lot of people don't think about Muslim people in Indonesia, but there are a lot of Muslim people in Indonesia. The majority of people that profess faith in Indonesia are Muslim, and there are some areas of Indonesia that are literally under Sharia law, like literally under Sharia law. And that has brought a lot of negative attention to Indonesia, especially from, like NGOs that work for stuff like women's rights and stuff for political equality and stuff like democracy. There's a lot of places in Indonesia that have really, really, really bad economic disparities. There's a lot of poverty in Indonesia, and the government for a little while has been trying to do some, I don't know what you want to call it, like PR work, right? So they're trying to increase tourism. They're specifically trying to increase tourism in things like, especially ecotourism, where you can go see pristine rainforest and things like that. And it's a beautiful place, right? It's beautiful. But things like, Borobudur, they would love for more people to go there. And as a way to try to kind of work on a little bit of that stuff, they've been more interested in allowing external archaeologists in. But it's still like, it's kind of like a give with one hand and you take with another, because they also don't really want you publishing stuff that doesn't kind of line up with their worldview. So there's been some trouble with like stuff getting published correctly or in ways that, accurately reflect what's going on. It's not nearly as bad as China. But Indonesia is actually kind of coming around. And like Cambodia and Thailand don't really have a problem with doing archaeology stuff. China, though, man, like doing archaeology in China, you can't do it without the government. Like you just literally can't. They won't let you in. They won't give you a permit unless you have people from the government with you. They don't let you do anything by yourself. And I mean, I can understand that to a certain extent, but then they also basically have all control over publication rights. You don't get to do anything with the data that you find. Like they are even nitpicky in certain situations about releasing photographs. Like I was an archaeologist. I went to this site. I dug this site. I took pictures of this site. They don't even really like you taking photos out in certain situations because the fear is that you might, use this to discredit the official Chinese history version or something like that, because they protect that officially government-sanctioned historical narrative really, really fervently. And it's really unfortunate because it's, in many cases, absolutely wrong. And this is why anytime anything comes out of archaeology from China, I immediately take it with the largest grain of salt that I can manage. I don't really trust anything that comes out of there anymore. It's really unfortunate because there's so much cool stuff there. And ancient history. Some of the first human civilizations, period, were in China. And it's hard to even judge how that works because China has been on a kick, and especially the last 10 to 12 years or so, trying to make it seem like they are the world's first civilization. So they're trying to predate everybody else, and it's just inaccurate. It's not correct. They're trying to push back their civilization 20,000 plus years, and it doesn't work. Now, I don't have a problem. I'm getting in on a bit of a soapbox, but anyway. What's up, Uncle Bill? You came in at a time where I was rambling about stuff, and I saw you pop in, and I was like, I need to say hello to Uncle Bill, and then I just kept talking and kept talking and kept talking. All right, Matron, good to see you. Thanks for popping in. Thanks again for the sub. Much appreciated, my friend. And again, offer is open if you ever need to talk to somebody or bounce an idea off somebody or anything like that. Just let me know. I'd be happy to. All right, let's actually go look for somebody to raid. And I know where we're going to go to raid automatically because he raids us all the time, and we rarely ever get to raid him. The ramble was good. No worries. I appreciate that. It was a directed and intelligent ramble. Right, and that's better than just a random person on the internet ramble, right? Raid the ducks. I don't even know what that means. We're going to go raid Aristotle, or maybe we're not, because it looks like he's actually raided somebody else. So maybe we're not going to go raid Aristotle. I thought we were going to go raid Aristotle, but it looks like he has moved on. Oh, he raided me. Aristotle, what's up, man? I was literally about to raid you. I was about to raid you. Like, oh, we never get to raid him because he's always raiding in here. Good times. I was like, where did he go? And I was like actually pulling up your channel to see. Dun 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 dun. Frank, big time. Thanks so much for that follow, my friend. Welcome in. Welcome to the adventure. Hope you're having a good one. Aloha to you as well, my friend. Aristotle, how was the stream? How was it going? Dun, dun, dun. DCI Banks, thank you so much for that follow. Welcome in. Welcome to the adventure. How's it going? Cryonics, how's it going, my friend? Welcome, welcome. Broken Toilet Seat, I see you in there. How's it going? Hello, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Shane. I teach college history and sociology on stream. We talk about history stuff. Tonight we were talking about Southeastern Asia, which is down there. We talked about 3 Southeastern Asian empires. We talked about the Nanjiao, who were situated roughly in this region right here. Then we talked about the Khmer, who were situated right here. And then we ended up talking about the Shailendra dynasty, who were situated down here in what is modern-day Indonesia and Thailand. We talk about history. We talk about it in a way that isn't boring.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Tuna, what's up, my friend? Thank you so much for that subscription. History, hasn't this happened before? Kinda? Anyway, we talk about history. We goof off. We have a good time. I was just on a rant about archaeology in Asia and how certain areas are better or worse than others. I travel as much as I can. I've done, site survey, archaeological stuff. I've been to digs before and stuff like that. Pretty cool stuff. It's what we do here. We also goof off and have a good time, so you'll fit in. Let me catch up with chat. I have a question, but it takes a bit of background. What's the mountain range in South America? Then I can begin. The big one is the Andes. So if we're looking down here in South America, if you're looking at this big old chain of mountains, this is the Andes mountain range. Ironically, not Menti. A lot of people get that confused. Mountain range, not Menti. Crynex answered the Andes. There we go. Short stream, but good, kind of spacey. Man, I feel like that is the truth. I feel that. Trying to revise your book manuscript. Oh, that's cool, man. When you get to a point where you need a ghost reader, let me know. Hit me up. Send it that way. I'll be happy to read that. Was lurking for the Bimoism. Yeah, man, Bimoism is a great religion. It's a really cool concept. Really like that. All right, Raveland, take it easy, my friend. Good to see you. Good Nacht. Have a good one. There are a lot of nuts in the Andes. They have quite a few down there. I can't remember what they're called. The big ones. They're really hard to get into. Completely lost. You can get them in mixed nuts. The really big ones. There's a very unfortunate colloquial term for them that I won't use. They named this mountain range after the redhead from the Goonies. There we go. Brazil nuts. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Like the big ones that have like the really, really dense shell that you kind of have to crack open with a hammer. Oh yeah, dude, I absolutely love the white trolling, but I will totally spin that into an academic thing like 9 times out of 10. Sometimes on that 1 time out of 10 where I can come up with a good goofy response, I'll spin it into a goofy response that sounds academic. And that's when you know that I'm like turning on all cylinders. Most of the time I'll just try to answer it like it's an honest question. But you know, that's mostly because I'm a giant goofball, you know, so, there's a level of seriousness that is in every question. This, by the way, this program right here is Google Earth. If you aren't using Google Earth already, download this junk because it's real cool. Real cool. Does anybody have any questions about anything? I was actually just about to bug out, but we can hang around for just a little bit more since everybody just came in. You're British and you love history. That's cool, man. I am American and I love history too. You have cooler history than we do in certain situations. We have cooler history than you do in certain situations. What's in the news? I don't know. Am I supposed to talk about something specific, or am I just talking about 2 things in the news aside from train derailments? I can do that. Anything in particular though? Unidentified flying objects. What the crap is flying over America? Probably more of those darn Chinese balloon things. clearly they're not weather balloons. Clearly they're not weather balloons. Um, what they are likely is some level of information gathering satellite. And I will refer everybody in the process of me doing my thing and like reading everything. I ran into an interview with a guy named Michael Nance, who was a former member of the NSA here in America, and he was doing an interview talking about this with Bill Maher on Bill Maher's show Real Time, and Mr. Nance was talking basically about how this is really actually not nearly as scary as it seems, because what this sort of means is that China's high-level spy satellites actually suck and they don't actually gather a lot of information. So they needed to put a satellite on a balloon that floated by at a lower level to get more information, which means that their spy satellite technology is probably still stuck in the 80s. So this is actually more humiliating for them than it actually should seem, and we probably shouldn't worry too much about it. That they probably just lost a lot of these in the process of, trying to get some data about something. We all know that China's full of crap on 90% of the stuff that it does. And honestly, it might just as likely be propaganda for the Chinese government as a distraction from the fact that their economy's in the crapper right now. For the first time in 50-something years, no, longer than that, since the 60s. For the first time since the 60s, their population declined year over year. That's not good for them. They're already in massive trouble population-wise. They're not going to be able to have enough kids to make up for the 20-plus years of the one-child policy. They're in big trouble, and the Chinese economy is about to bubble pop, potentially. So having Chinese tech shot down by America gives the central government something to yell about on TV and distract the Chinese people from the fact that they're doing really horribly. That thousands of people are dying every day from COVID over there because they have managed that so poorly. It's probably take a loss to lose a smaller battle kind of situation, right? Like if you're going to lose one or the other, you want to lose the one that you can control and spin than the one that you can't control and can't spin. That's pretty much the way that I'm taking it. Those 5-year plans are great for longevity, right? Exactly. Aren't a lot of countries in bad states population age-wise? Some of the Asian countries are. Japan is in pretty bad shape underwater. They're people that are basically Gen X and millennials are not having kids very much at all, and this is a lot of drive towards sort of the inevitable population gap situation. I'm not saying this very well. Let me stop when I'm talking and then collect my thoughts, and then I'll say it in a formulated, cogent statement. Okay, so there was a big population drop as a response to the economic drop in Japan in the 90s. And as a result of that, a lot of people have been pushed into working and having to work a lot because they're supporting not just their parents but also their grandparents. So in many situations, they have what's called a 1-2-4. So they have one person working who's supporting 2 parents and 4 grandparents, and that doesn't leave a lot of time for personal interaction with a spouse or any financial ability to have a kid in the first place. So because of the fact that their population also lives a long time, Asian cultures typically have a longer lifespan than especially American populations. So they're keeping their people around longer, and they're also having fewer people work in those positions. There's also been a lot of debate about whether or not they're going to force people into retirement or keep people from retiring and try to see how that works. So So, I mean, some countries are doing great, right? Like, some countries are just having kids like crazy, but China and Japan are both in fairly underwater situations. If we're going to make our 20 or 30-year-olds not want to have kids, then what do you get? Exactly, right? Right, yeah. That's what DCI Banks is saying, right? Like, if you can't afford to have a kid, you're not going to have a kid, right? First world countries make up for the lack of childbirth through immigration. Well, I mean, even if you look at the child birth rates in America, right, the birth rates haven't changed that much. There was a bit of a dip in 2020 because of COVID. Nobody wanted to have a kid and go to the hospital, in COVID world. But if you look at even 2021, if you look at 2019 birth rates in America and 2021 birth rates in America, they're about the same. There's negligible difference. The biggest dip in birth rates in America was after 2008. So like 2009-ish, there's a really significant drop in the birth rate. Then it leveled back out, but not back up to the level that it was. It recovered about 50% of the dip. It got back almost up to 2008 standards around 2012. But since then, it's been down or about level every year. So that was one thing in the news. Do we want to talk about anything else in the news? Anything specifically? Or should I just pick something else and talk about it? Do you think it's possible we'll see a wave of legalized euthanasia over the coming decades in the top-heavy countries? We're already seeing that. Wait. When you say legalized euthanasia, as in the government is forcibly killing people, or are you talking about suicide assistance? Because assisted suicide, or specifically medically assisted suicide, that's already spreading. There are already states in the United States that allow that, given certain circumstances with health. But that's already spreading through European countries as well, like Switzerland and the Netherlands. I think Belgium already has a law about that. Suicide assistance, yeah. An economic solution masquerading as a human right. Okay, so I mean, I'll take a little bit of a hot take here. But in certain circumstances, if a person literally can't get out of a debilitating disease, right? Like, let's say I have stage 4 terminal cancer, and there's literally nothing that can be done, right? Like, I am not going to survive. Every doctor that I go to tells me that I'm not going to survive. It's so severe that my pain can't even be managed with legal prescription drugs. It can't be managed with illegal prescription drugs. And I'm going to live the rest of my life in abject pain. Do I have the right to end my life? I don't think that's not a human right. I don't think that's an economic problem. I think that those people have a choice that they should be able to make. But that's just me saying my hot take. I don't think we should encourage that, and I don't think that it should be easy to obtain. And I definitely don't think that if you're having a bad day, you should just go kill yourself. But in certain circumstances, I see that as absolutely an ethical human rights choice for an individual to make, not a government or a committee or something, but an individual to make. Didn't some Viking cultures used to have their old just walk into the wilderness and ipso facto die? Sometimes, yes, but that practice wasn't as widely done as it might seem, and it definitely wasn't done the way that it was done in Midsummer. That movie was horrible, historically speaking and culturally speaking, and not that good even as a movie. Suicide assistance, economic. I saw in Canada there was someone who wanted assisted suicide for being homeless. Yeah, see, that's the thing that we can. That's an easy solution. Just put that person in a home. That's not hard to do. Increased medical costs are already doing that. It shouldn't even be a hot take. People should be able to use medical technologies to end their own lives humanely in the case of terminal illness. Yeah, see, I mean, but if you said that, especially around where I live in the States, that is absolutely a hot take. Absolutely a hot take. That would get me chewed out by many people, especially people that are in my area, not a fan of that concept. I think the governments fear unscrupulous family members encouraging them to die for their inheritance. I'm sure that would happen. I'm not going to lie. Like, humans do dumb and horrible and bad stuff. We've always done dumb and horrible and bad stuff. That is the lesson of history. And the moral of history is don't do it again, but we don't ever listen to the moral. So, it's going to end up happening. But I don't think that... I think that if it were done properly and with the right amount of oversight, I don't think that would be a significant portion of the people seeking medically assisted suicide. I don't think so. I could be absolutely wrong, and if I were, I would say so. All right, I still owe somebody something in the news, so I'm just going to pick something in the news and talk about it. And I think that what I want to talk about is Nicola Sturgeon quitting as head of the SNP. So in Scotland, there's the Scottish Nationals Party, and they are basically, Scotland is part of the United Kingdom. They are a country that's part of the United Kingdom. And their leader was a lady named Nicola Sturgeon. And specifically, she took over right after the last big referendum on Scottish independence. So back in, was that 2016 or 2018 when the referendum was? I think it was 2018. Was it 2018? It was 2016. Nor is it 2018. Anyway, 2014. Oh, so Brexit, that's okay. Anyway, so there's a referendum in 2014 and Brexit happened. And anyway, Scotland has been debating whether or not it wants to be part of the UK. And Nicola Sturgeon had been pushing for another referendum. And at one point even said, we're going to hold one, and had asked Boris Johnson to allow for a particular part of the law called Section 30 to go into effect that would allow Scotland to vote for independence after Brexit, right? So Britain left the EU, Scotland wanted to stay in the EU. Way more population-wise, way more people in Scotland voted to stay than to go. But they left, right? And this didn't sit well with people in Scotland, so they wanted another independence vote. And Boris Johnson said, no, we're not going to give it to you. So Nicola Sturgeon said, well, we're going to try to do it anyway. And this got into the Supreme Court of England and of the UK, got all the way up to the top, and they said, you are not allowed to hold a vote, regardless of whether you want to or not. Like, you just can't do it without the UK's government giving you the thumbs up to do it. So that was a pretty big blow to Scottish independence, and a big blow to Nicola Sturgeon, who had been pushing for it. Now, that's not all that was going on. There was also a very contentious bill that was narrowly passed through the Scottish Parliament, specifically addressing changing your legal gender on government documents. And the bill that passed through Scotland's Parliament said that basically all you had to do was declare that you were going to change your gender. And this was this differed from the law that was in place in the UK, which required you to basically have a doctor's visit to sort of confirm this. So they hold the vote, and it was pretty narrow, narrowly contested. So, are you talking about the original referendum back in 2014, or they did hold the vote for anyway? But yeah. now I'm getting confused because you're talking at a different time period than I am. Anyway, UK government said no, you can't pass, or no, you can't enact this law for transgenderism, and this was seen as a big slap in the face because technically any law passed by the Scottish Parliament has to be sort of okayed by the UK Parliament, and the current leader, the current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, brought up some arguments against the Scottish transgender bill, specifically that one of his biggest arguments was, well, if we let your bill go into place, we could have somebody that was listed legally on one side of the border as one gender and listed legally on the other side of the border as another gender. So basically, the British, the UK Parliament shut down this law going into effect in Scotland. And that seemed to be like a kind of a moment. But what's crazy about this whole thing is that Nicola Sturgeon, even as recently as just a few days ago, seemed to indicate that she was going to keep on going. But then kind of suddenly decided, you know what, I'm out. And this asks a lot of questions as to what was the actual reason. She said in interviews since the announcement that she's going to step down as the head of the SNP that it wasn't about this stuff. This was like long-term issues. It wasn't as a response to anything in particular. But there's a lot of questions and a lot of weirdness going around here. Not exactly sure why. So interesting stuff going on, and we don't know what this means. She got fired by Rupert Murdoch. Wow. It was the Isla Bryson standard. Well, see, that's another thing. Like, we don't even, like, was it really? Or was it a combination of a whole bunch of things? Or was it something that we don't even know about yet? I mean, because clearly she was still around after that. So, I don't know. Interesting situation there in the UK. But it is now time for us to raid. I did want to hang around for a little while after the raid came in, but it is time. It only makes sense that it's something we don't know about. Yeah, see, that's what I'm feeling like there's going to be something that's going to come out in the news. I think that there's going to be something like maybe a month from now or maybe a year from now that's going to like leak out, and then we're going to figure out like, oh, that's why. So I'm mostly talking about this is to put this on people's radar. So if you see something about this, you can kind of know what's up. Because I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, if you will.
I used to be you.
So we're going to go do a raid. I just hope it's not. They hate each other so much. I don't see how that could be a thing, Vipers. I just don't see how. I don't see how that could be a thing. That's on a level that I don't necessarily want to consider. Okay. Before we get too far off into the horrible weeds, let's go do a raid. We're going to go raid my friend Cave Geek, who is a friend of the show, who's maybe going to play some games in a bit, but is currently doing some art or playing around with something with aliens. I don't know exactly what he's doing. Cave Geek is raiding me? No, he isn't. No, he's not. He's just on stream. Oh, you're doing that thing, Moose. Whatever. Anyway, we're going to go raid Cave Geek, who's a pretty cool guy, a good friend. When we get to his chat, yell adventure. And if you've got those lovely adventure hats, you can throw those in the chat. Thanks everybody that came in. Thanks for all the new follows. Thanks for the subscriptions. Have a great time, or I had a great time hanging out tonight with everybody. Thanks for the good, lively conversation. It always makes me feel better. Always makes my day a little bit brighter. The next time you'll definitely see me is Tuesday night. We'll be doing a viewer request stream on the Teutonic Order of Knights. Next Thursday is going to be India in the 9th century, so come on back by for some more Asian goodness. But until then, everybody, take care of yourselves. Thank you all so much for coming by. Love you guys, and I hope you have a great weekend if I don't see you until then. The knights who say ye, right? All right, everybody. Have a good one.